All right, hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about why your AI is lying to you or hallucinating, as you might have heard, and how you can get some better responses. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you what has saved me $100 in AI subscriptions with a quick 5-minute install. It's really exciting. I think you're going to love it. Okay, so what am I talking about? Here's a great example. Who wrote the sequel to The Great Gatsby? If I ask AI that right now, I will get a response like this one I pasted right here. The sequel, Return to the West Egg, was published by F. Scott Fitzgerald in 1927, and there's a bit of a plot there too. This book doesn't exist. There was no sequel written to The Great Gatsby. But this is what AI does when it doesn't know the answer. It gives you something that you don't need. And I'm going to explain exactly why that happens. So what AI is doing is basically reading an encyclopedia once a couple years ago and then reciting answers from memory. And so putting that into like real context is AIs are trained and then they are only giving that subset of information and then they're released to the public. But their information gathering stops at that release or at the end of that training. And so anything that is current, anything that wasn't included in that training subset is not usable for you. And that's when your AI will hallucinate on you. Other reasons too, but these are the main culprits of why your AI will hallucinate or give you a lie instead of answering from a real source. And so what we can do instead is use RAG, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, which sounds, pretty techy, but all it is just having the AI go look up the answer first, which seems so basic. Why isn't AI doing this? So instead of just reciting from memory what it remembers from the encyclopedia it read, it will instead go look up the answer and then cite the page for you. So it will go read exactly that category or that question that you have, go find it, reread it, refresh its memory, give you an answer, and then tell you the pages it used to get the answer for you. Okay, so how RAG works a little deeper. RAG will go retrieve the R, will retrieve the information from a document, encyclopedia, a website. It won't exactly control F for that information for like a keyword. It will more so look at for your meaning that you're trying to convey with the question, which is really helpful and a big difference. Then it will augment, which is basically refreshing its memory. It will read through the information that it found and then kind of really have that refreshed, informed answer that it can then generate for you for the G. It will generate a response based on what it retrieved and augmented, which is different than how your AI is currently working, which is trying to remember what it said and then just generating. It doesn't go back, it doesn't retrieve, it doesn't augment and refresh its memory. It just kind of spits out the first thing it thinks, which is pretty tough sometimes. So what this can look like with an example, if I ask, what is Shakespeare's take on Bitcoin in Romeo and Juliet? Current AI will say, Shakespeare thought blah, 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 blah about Bitcoin in Romeo and Juliet. Here are some quotes about Bitcoin from scene 1, act 2 from Romeo and Juliet on Bitcoin. That's not what RAG does, which is really helpful. Instead, it will go back and look at that source material. It will look for your meaning of Bitcoin, look for where it would be in there, and then also do maybe some outside research on different websites or something like that to try to better understand what your question is, if you allow it to do that. And then it will come back with a better response like Shakespeare never wrote about Bitcoin. He couldn't. He died in 1616. Long before this was invented. So this is a way that you can see we're really grounding the AI in real information, which allows us to have real results. If this is helpful, please subscribe. This channel is all about building with real AI and not letting the technical jargon get in our way as we are trying to learn and grow and ship through AI. So here's it in more of a business context. If I ask ChatGPT what our refund policy is for annual plans, it will tell me something, but it won't be grounded in what our internal documents say. So instead, what we can do with RAG is give it some of these internal documents, and it will be able now to quote through our different policies or handbooks in order to answer this question. So you can see, one, AI without RAG just kind of gave me a random answer. But with RAG, it was able to look through our different policies, look through the different information that I gave it on our company, and then say we have a 30-day refund policy instead. So this is how we're seeing so much in the news from like Forbes and all these different articles about how companies are trying to implement AI, but more than 95% of them haven't seen any value from those implementations or those projects yet. This is how you ground AI in your actual workflows. You can continue through using RAG at different levels. This is basic, giving it a policy handbook. But as you continue implementing RAG in your company, you'll want to do things like if you have a really detailed workflow, you'll want to have very specific documentation that's already been chunked out. So if I want like maybe a client system that customer service representative that can handle some of these refund requests, then I don't want to give it all of our policies, all of our handbooks, our mission, vision, our roadmaps. I want to give it really detailed information on refunds and what we believe about those, what we want to do about those, what kind of parameters it has. Giving that really detailed information to a very specific workflow will help that AI stay in tune with what you're looking to do with that workflow. A lot of people don't do that. They just kind of point AI at something and wonder why it's not getting the right information. But this is how you really make it useful for yourself or your business. And RAG isn't magic. You can't just give it everything. There are certain things you should keep in mind. Like, I don't want to give my AI a bunch of extremely detailed PowerPoints or maybe a bunch of like scanned copies of a handbook that kind of are hard to read. We want to give the AI things that make it really easy to work through. So like PDFs or sectioned out chunks, markdown files, that makes it so much easier for our systems to be able to run through and get information in the right way. So something to think about. It's not magic. You can't just throw the entire internet at it. You want to be specific about what you're trying to do with it, and then you'll get a more tailored response. Same thing to think about when it comes to the kind of freshness of the information that you're giving it. If I give it a handbook from 2020 and our values and our policies have changed, I can't be surprised then when I get responses that are in tune with those previous policies. I don't want to give it, 2020, 2021, 2022's roadmaps. I want to have it refreshed with like this current roadmap that we're working on. So make sure you're giving it the right type of information, because if it has, a few options, it might not go with the right one that you would like it to. So it's something to keep in mind. All right. Now this is exciting. This is called Graphify. It is not RAG exactly, like not that type of technology, but it works on a lot of the same type of principles, like ideas behind it. Having better output, looking through a shorter context window, being able to not use as many tokens, because instead of looking at a huge corpus of information, it's able to look through what are called connections. So Graphify can take your code base, for example. It's very good at having connections through code bases, and it can look for maybe different, if I have my landing page and I have maybe a button that takes you to our about page and that has a download about our mission. Graphify will connect all of those with different nodes. And so if I ask our AI a question about that code base or a question about that download, instead of looking at the entire code base, it will look at those couple connections and only have to look at a small amount of information instead, which is super helpful when you are paying for your AI usage, because it looks like from early access to this that it can drastically reduce your token usage by up to 70 times. So instead of continuously rereading and getting all of that context and kind of like, rereading that encyclopedia each and every time you ask it a question, it maps out all the different pieces and chapters and things within that encyclopedia so that it's really fast to go and find what it's looking for. And it doesn't need to take in that whole book every time it wants a response from you. So that's how that works, and is so helpful. I have the Claude Code $200 subscription. It is kind of insane, but also I use it a lot, so it's really helpful. But with Graphify, getting 70 times more usage I no longer need that one. I can maybe even go down to the $20 subscription on this sometimes with depending on the month that I have or whatever. But it can definitely go down to like the mid with $100 instead of 200, because the amount that you're saving is just so insane. And usually I'll have like my application that I've worked on. And so if I just have it graph that out once, then I can save so much after that. So if I'm just making changes to apps that I already have, then I could use a very small subscription and have very low token usage instead. So something to really think about. It also helps you with those connections and having better responses as well. But really cool technology. Here's a way for you to download it. I'll also have an install guide below. So go ahead and grab these two. The first one is a RAG setup list. So it'll teach you how to use RAG. There's a couple that are already baked into like tools like Notebook LM or Claude projects where you can just input information. It can only kind of pull from that base for the most part. Makes it really easy for beginners. So grab that one if you're just trying to set this up for the first time or want a little more information. It'll also tell you how to prompt for RAG. So you want to say, only look at this corpus of documents or only refer to these few files when answering these questions. Something like that can really tailor it and kind of make it very specific to what you're looking to have. And then how to set up Graphify is the other downloadable that you'll have. So this is how you're able to get it set up and then really start saving your tokens, not just in Claude Code, but also in Gemini, ChatGPT, and any other Copilot subscription that you're using. This will be very, very helpful. I hope you understand now how to get better responses with your AI. You understand why you might not have been getting too good of ones to start. And I've really enjoyed having you all here. I love doing this. So like and subscribe. And also, if you enjoyed how this was presented to you, this video is sponsored by Lovable. And Lovable is how I make all of these kind of slide deck type presentations. And they are so good for prototyping. So if you want to get an MVP or a first pass through an app that you're trying to build or a dashboard or anything, Lovable is my pick, hands down. No one really compares right now. So link in the description below if that sounds good to you. And thank you again for joining, and we will see you soon.